Hi, welcome. The air in the store was thick with the scent of lavender and entitlement, a suffocating perfume of money. Ma'am, I've already told you, the manager said, his voice a blade wrapped in silk. We don't carry floor models for you to inspect. He eyed Dr. Anna Sharma's simple cotton dress and worn Birkenstocks, his gaze lingering on the gentle swell of her stomach. The insult was clear. She wasn't a customer. She was a nuisance. Anna stood her ground, tired but resolute. The polished marble floors of Bambino Couture on Rodeo Drive reflected a distorted version of Anna, a woman who didn't belong. Sunlight streamed through the floor, toe-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing over ridiculously expensive cribs carved from Scandinavian ash and strollers upholstered in Italian leather. It was a temple for the unborn royalty of Beverly Hills. And Anna, 6 months pregnant and bone-weary from a 12-hour shift, felt like a heretic at the altar. All she wanted was the Cybex Sirona S car seat. It wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. As a pediatric cardiologist, she'd seen firsthand the devastating consequences of improper infant support. This particular model had superior side impact protection and a load leg that reduced crash forces by up to 30%. She had researched it for weeks between patient consultations and late-night research papers. It was the best, the safest. Her baby deserved nothing less. But the manager, a man whose name tag read Mark Peterson, store director, saw none of that. He saw a South Asian woman with tired eyes, hair pulled back in a functional but messy bun, and a dress she'd bought at Target. He saw someone who was touching the merchandise without the requisite air of ownership. As I explained, Mark said, stepping between her and the display model, his body language a physical barrier. This is our last one. It's reserved. Anna took a slow, deep breath, trying to tamp down the frustration that gnawed at her. Reserved? I called this morning. Your associate Chloe told me you had 2 in stock and that I could come see one. Mark offered a smile that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. Chloe is new. She gets things wrong. This one is for Mrs. Davenport. You might know her husband, the film producer. They are very particular. He leaned in conspirator ally, his voice dropping. We can't have just anyone handling items that are going to a certain caliber of clientele. The humiliation was a hot flush that crept up her neck. Just anyone. The phrase hung in the air, heavy and sharp. She wasn't a doctor who held tiny, failing hearts in her hands. She wasn't a woman who had fought through years of grueling medical school and residency. She was just anyone, a brown woman in a cheap dress, presumably with sticky fingers and a barren bank account. I'm not just handling it, Anya said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. I'm a paying customer. I'd like to purchase it. I don't need a floor model. A boxed one is fine. Mark's feigned patience snapped. He crossed his arms, puffing out his chest. We don't have another boxed one, and frankly, ma'am, this is a 4-figure car seat. Perhaps I could show you something more appropriate for your budget. We have a lovely line of Graco products in the back. The condescension was suffocating. He was dismissing her, shooing her away like a stray dog. Every instinct screamed at her to walk out, to take her money to a place that didn't judge her worth by the label on her dress. But it wasn't just about her. It was about the principle. It was about the wearing, endless fight against 1,000 tiny cuts of prejudice she faced every day. And it was about this specific damn car seat that her baby needed. My budget is not your concern, she stated, her tone hardening. My concern is that your store's inventory system and your employee indicated you had this item for sale. I drove 45 minutes from the hospital to be here. I would like to buy it. A mother pushing a stroller laden with shopping bags slowed, her eyes wide with interest. A young couple browsing for onesies glanced over, sensing the escalating tension. The store, once a quiet sanctuary of wealth, had become a stage, and Mark had just cast her as the villain. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, he hissed, his face re-eating. You're making a scene. I'm not the one making a scene, Anna counted, her voice dangerously calm. I'm a pregnant woman trying to buy a car seat. You're the one making baseless assumptions about my finances and treating me like a criminal. He scoffed a short, ugly sound. Oh, I see. It's one of those situations. You come in, cause a fuss, and hope for a discount. It won't work here. Just as the words left his mouth, the grand glass doors of Bambino Couture chimed, announcing a new arrival. Anna's gaze, filled with a mixture of anger and exhaustion, flickered toward the entrance, her breath caught in her throat. It was David, her ex-husband, David Chun. He looked exactly the same, impeccable in a tailored suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, a look of casual confidence on his face as he spoke into his phone. He hadn't seen her yet. He was strolling in the picture of the store's ideal customer. And in that moment, as her past collided with her deeply unpleasant present, Anna felt the floor drop out from beneath her. Of all the places, of all the times, the injustice of it all, Mark's prejudice, the public shaming, and now the ghost of her failed marriage, standing 10 feet away, felt like a physical weight pressing down on her chest right above the child he would never know was his. David ended his call with a crisp, "Execute the trade. I'll be there in 20. He slid his phone into the pocket of his Xenia suit jacket, his eyes scanning the boutique. His sister's baby shower was tomorrow, and he'd completely forgotten a gift. He was here for a perfunctory purchase, a quick in and out before his next meeting. He expected sterile, quiet, and obsequious service. He did not expect a scene. He saw the manager, a Florida man with a tight collar, squared off against a woman whose back was mostly to him. A small crowd of shoppers was pretending not to watch. David's first instinct, honed by years in the cutthroat world of finance, was to avoid the conflict, go to the other side of the store, grab the most expensive cashmere blanket, and leave. But then the woman spoke, and the sound of her voice snagged on his memory. It was quiet, yet it carried an unmistakable authority, a low, clear timbre that he'd once known better than his own heartbeat. "My budget is not your concern." David froze. It couldn't be. He moved slightly to his left, trying to get a better view. She shifted, turning just enough for him to see her profile. The strong jawline, the elegant column of her neck, the dark, intelligent eyes now flashing with indignation. Anna, it was like being punched in the gut. 6 months. 6 months since the lawyers had finalized everything. 6 months since he'd last seen her, looking small and defeated in the sterile conference room. He'd told himself it was for the best. Her obsession with her career, her refusal to even consider starting a family, it had been a fundamental incompatibility. He wanted a partner, a wife, a mother for his children. She wanted, it seemed, to live at the hospital. And yet, seeing her now, a jolt of something raw and unprocessed shot through him. Regret, nostalgia. He wasn't sure. He only knew that the carefully constructed wall around that part of his life had just been bulldozed. Then his eyes traveled down from her face, past the simple gray dress, and landed on the unmistakable, gentle, perfect curve of her belly. A baby bump. The world tilted on its axis. The blood drained from his face, and the air in his lungs turned to stone. Pregnant. Anna was pregnant. The word echoed in the sudden roaring silence of his mind. How? When? Who? The questions were a frantic, chaotic swarm. His mind raced back through timelines. 6 months since the divorce. She was clearly 5 or 6 months along. The math was a brutal, simple equation that added up to a conclusion he couldn't bear. The baby was his. His legs felt unsteady. He gripped the edge of a display table, his knuckles white. The expensive silver rattle beneath his hand felt cold as ice. He watched a spectator to a drama that was suddenly intimately his own. The manager, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in David's world, was escalating. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice," the man hissed. Anna's response was calm, but David could see the tension in her shoulders, the rigid set of her spine. He knew that posture. It was her holding it together stance, the one she used after losing a patient. The manager's next words hit David like a physical blow. "Oh, I see. It's one of those situations. You come in 'cause of fuss and hope for a discount." Rage, primal and protective, surged through him. How dare this man speak to her that way? To Anna. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know that she was the most brilliant, compassionate person David had ever met. He didn't know that she probably made 3 times his salary, saving children's lives. Before he could think, David was moving. He strode across the marble floor, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Mark." The manager turned, his expression shifting from contempt for Anna to fawning respect for David's suit. "Sir, no problem at all. This lady was just leaving." Anna's head snapped around. Her eyes met David's, and for a second her composure wavered. He saw a flicker of shock, of hurt, of a deep and profound weariness, and then it was gone, replaced by a cool, unreadable mask. "David," she said, her voice flat. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he managed, his gaze dropping again to her stomach. He couldn't help it. It was a gravitational pull. His child was in there. Ignoring his question, Anna turned back to the manager. "I am not leaving. I am waiting to purchase the Cybex Sirona S." David stepped forward, reaching for his wallet. It was a reflex, the way he'd always solve problems with money. "Look, whatever the issue is, I'll handle it." "Anna, how much is it?" "I'll buy it for you." He thought he was helping. He thought he was being the hero, swooping in to save her from this public humiliation. He couldn't have been more wrong. Anna's eyes, when they turned back to him, were filled with a fire he hadn't seen since their worst fights. The hurt was gone, replaced by a cold, cutting fury. "Don't you dare," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Don't you dare try to handle this. You have no idea what's happening here." She wasn't just talking about the car seat. He knew it. She was talking about the last 2 years of their marriage, about the divorce, about the baby. He had swooped in, not as a savior, but as the final crushing insult in a day full of them. He had, in his clumsy attempt to fix things, sided with her accuser. He had validated the manager's assumption that she couldn't afford it, that she needed a man to rescue her. The chasm that had opened between them 6 months ago suddenly felt miles wider and infinitely deeper. And at the bottom of it lay the truth of the child she was carrying, a secret he was now a part of, whether she liked it or not. The silence that followed Anna's words was a living thing. It pulsed with the unspoken history between her and David, with the fresh wound of his misguided offer. Mark Peterson looked between the two of them, a flicker of confusion crossing his face before it settled back into smug certainty. He saw a domestic dispute, a lover's quarrel. It only solidified his narrative. This woman was trouble for Anna. David's presence was a cruel twist of the knife. Seeing him standing there so handsome and confident was a stark reminder of the life she had tried to build and the man she had tried to love. The man who had looked at her life's work, her calling, and called it a hobby that got in the way of his schedule. Their marriage had unraveled thread by thread, pulled apart by the friction of 2 fundamentally different worlds. David's life was dictated by market openings and closing bells, by profit margins and shareholder meetings. He saw the world as a series of transactions, of assets and liabilities. Her life was measured in heartbeats, the frantic, fluttering beats of a newborn with a congenital defect, the slow, steady rhythm of a successful surgery. "When are you going to stop playing doctor and start being a wife?" he'd asked one night after she'd come home late, smelling of antiseptic and exhaustion, having missed a dinner party with his clients. The words had stunned her. "Playing doctor. David, I performed a 7-hour arterial switch on a 2-day-old infant. That's not a game. It's all you care about," he'd shot back. "Your patients, the hospital. What about us? What about a family? My parents are asking about grandchildren every single day. All our friends have kids. We're falling behind. Falling behind as if life were a race to be won with marriage and children as checkpoints along the way." She had tried to explain that her job was demanding, yes, but it was also who she was. It wasn't a choice like picking a stock. It was a vow, but he couldn't understand a commitment that didn't yield a quarterly return. The arguments grew more frequent, more bitter. He saw her dedication as a rejection of him, of the life he had planned for them. She saw his demands as a rejection of her very soul. The end came quietly, not with a bang, but with the sterile rustle of legal papers. He had been generous, of course. David was always generous with money. He'd given her the house, a substantial settlement, a golden handshake for her wheelie services. What he wouldn't give her was respect. 2 weeks after he moved out, surrounded by boxes and the ghost of their shared life, Anna fainted in the middle of a hospital corridor, an ER workup and a blood test. Later, the world had shifted once more. Pregnant, 8 weeks, a final secret remnant of their broken union. She'd sat on the floor of the empty nursery they had argued about for months, the positive pregnancy test in her hand, and cried, not with sadness, but with a strange, fierce joy. This child was not a checkpoint or a transaction. This was a heartbeat. Her heartbeat, she never told David. It wasn't a decision born of malice, but of self-preservation. This baby was hers, untainted by his expectations and timetables. This would be a life nurtured by love, not by social obligation. She would not allow her child to become another pawn in David's game of keeping up. Now standing in the fluorescent glare of Bambino Couture, with David's shocked eyes fixed on her belly and his wallet in his hand, her carefully protected peace was shattered. His offer to pay for the car seat was a perfect, painful echo of his entire worldview. Any problem could be solved by throwing money at it. He wasn't defending her honor. He was trying to quiet an embarrassing situation to manage a liability. She drew herself up to her full height. "I don't need your money, David. I never did." She turned her back on him, a gesture of finality, and faced Mark again. Her own anger was a clean, cold flame, now burning away the last of her weariness. "Let's be very clear," she said, her voice ringing with the same authority she used in the operating room. "My name is Dr. Anna Sharma. I am a pediatric cardiologist at UCLA Mattel Children's Hospital. I am here to purchase the safest possible car seat for my child based on extensive medical research. I am not making a scene. I am trying to complete a simple retail transaction, and you are obstructing it based on what I can only assume is a toxic combination of misogyny and racial prejudice." Every word was precise, deliberate, and devastating. The other shoppers were no longer pretending not to listen. They were staring, phones subtly angled. Mark's face went from red to a sickly mottled white. He was used to dealing with screaming socialites and demanding husbands. He was not prepared for this, not for this quiet, articulate dismantling of his entire persona. "Now," Anna continued, her voice dropping but losing none of its intensity, "you have two options. You can sell me the car seat that your store has in stock as required by law. Or you can refuse, and I will spend my evening filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and a few key reporters I got to know after performing a life-saving surgery on their publisher's son. Your choice." A muscle twitched in Mark's jaw. He was cornered, beaten, but his pride, the petty tyranny that was the only real power he had, wouldn't let him surrender gracefully. Security," he stammered, his voice cracking. "I need security at the main entrance. We have a disruptive individual who is refusing to leave." He was doubling down, making the catastrophic choice to escalate rather than retreat. It was a desperate, foolish move, and it was about to bring his entire world crashing down. The call for security was a point of no return. It transformed the tense standoff into a public spectacle. The word security echoed off the marble, sharp and accusatory, cementing Anna's role as the designated threat. A large man in a navy blue blazer with a Bambino Couture logo embroidered on the pocket materialized from a back office, his face a mask of bored indifference. He was big but slow, clearly more of a visual deterrent than an actual enforcer. "What's the problem, Mark?" The security guard, whose name tag read, Frank, grunted. "This woman," Mark said, pointing a trembling finger at Anna, "is harassing me and other customers. She's refusing to leave the premises. I need you to escort her out." Anna stood her ground, her arms crossed over her belly in a protective gesture. She felt a profound, surreal calm settle over her. The situation had escalated beyond absurdity. Here she was, a doctor, a healer, being painted as a dangerous, disruptive force for trying to buy a piece of safety equipment for her unborn child. David, who had been frozen in place by her furious dismissal, finally found his voice. "Wait a minute," he said, stepping forward. "This is a misunderstanding. She's not harassing anyone. Just sell her the car seat, and this will all be over." Mark turned on him, his fear and humiliation curdling into aggression. "Sir, with all due respect, this is an internal store matter. Please step back. We have procedures for this kind of thing." He then looked past Anna, his eyes filled with venom, and added, loud enough for everyone to hear, "We get people like her all the time. They try to return stolen merchandise for cash or cause a scene hoping for a handout. It's a classic scam. People like her." The words so casually venomous landed like a punch. They stripped her of her individuality, of her accomplishments, of her humanity. She was no longer Dr. Anna Sharma. She was a type, a category of suspicion, a dark-skinned woman in a world that prized whiteness, a modestly dressed person in a temple of luxury. A young woman standing nearby, who had been filming the entire exchange on her phone, gasped audibly. "That is unbelievable," she muttered. The security guard, Frank, looked uneasy. He was just a guy doing a job, and he clearly hadn't signed up for this level of public ugliness. He took a half step toward Anna. "Ma'am," he said, his voice softer than Mark's. "Maybe it's best if you just come with me. We can talk about this outside." "I'm not going anywhere," Anna said, her voice dangerously quiet. "And that young woman is right. This is unbelievable." She looked directly at Mark, her eyes holding his. "You've just accused me of attempted fraud in front of a dozen witnesses. You've publicly defamed me. This has gone far beyond a simple customer service complaint." David was frantic. This was spiraling out of control. He saw the phone recording the scene. He saw the shocked faces of the other shoppers. This was a PR disaster in the making. And Anna, his pregnant ex-wife, was at the center of it. "Mark, listen to me," David tried again, his voice urgent. "You need to de-escalate this right now. You have no idea who you're talking to." But Mark was too far gone. He felt his authority being challenged, his little kingdom under siege. He saw David not as an ally, but as a dupe, another victim of this woman's manipulations. "Sir, I'm warning you. I'll have you removed as well," he blustered. He turned back to Frank, his voice rising to a shrill command. "Frank, get her out of here now. If you have to call the BHPD." The threat of calling the Beverly Hills Police Department was the final straw. The absurdity of it was almost laughable. Arrested for what? Shopping while pregnant. Shopping while brown. Frank took another reluctant step. He reached out a hand, not to grab her, but as a placating gesture. "Mom, please." Before his fingers could touch her arm, a new voice cut through the tension. It was a woman's voice, cool, elegant, and laced with steel. "What in God's name is going on in my store?" All heads turned toward the back of the boutique. Standing in the arched doorway that led to the stockroom was a woman in her late 50s. She was impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit, her silver blonde hair styled in a chic bob. Her face was patrician, her expression radiating a displeasure so profound it seemed to lower the temperature of the room. Mark Peterson's jaw dropped. The color drained from his face, leaving it a pasty gray. "Mrs. Du Bois," he stammered. "I didn't know you were here today." The woman, Catherine Du Bois, ignored him completely. Her sharp, intelligent eyes swept over the scene. The intimidated security guard, the gawking customers, the man in the expensive suit looking utterly lost, and the pregnant woman at the center of it all, who stood with an air of impossible dignity. Her gaze rested on Anna. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, then a dawning light of recognition, followed by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. "Dr. Sharma," Catherine Du Bois said, her voice suddenly losing its icy edge, replaced by a tone of stunned disbelief. "Anna, is that you?" The sound of her name, spoken with such familiarity and warmth by the impeccably dressed woman, sent a ripple of confusion through the onlookers. David stared, his mind struggling to connect the dots. Who was this woman? How did she know Anna? Anna herself felt a wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled her knees. "Catherine," she breathed, a small genuine smile finally breaking through her strained composure. "Hello." Catherine Du Bois strode forward, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. She completely ignored her panicked store director, her security guard, and David. Her focus was entirely on Anna. She gently took Anna's hands in her own, her perfectly manicured fingers a stark contrast to Anna's bare ones. "My dear, what are you doing here?" Catherine's eyes then fell to Anna's stomach, and her expression softened into one of absolute delight. "And look at you. Oh, this is wonderful news. You didn't say a word at our last appointment." She looked from Anna's belly back to her face, then took in the whole scene again, her brow furrowing with dawning horror. Her gaze finally fell on Mark Peterson, and the warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a glacial fury. "Mark," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Explain this. Explain to me why my star employee is attempting to physically remove one of the finest pediatric cardiologists in the country from my store. A doctor, I might add, to whom I personally owe everything. Take your time. I want to hear every single detail." The title, "My Store," landed in the room like a grenade. Catherine Du Bois wasn't just a wealthy customer. She was the owner, the founder and CEO of the entire Bambino Couture international chain. Mark Peterson looked as though he might faint. His face was slick with sweat. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish, but no sound came out. He looked at Anna, then at Mrs. Du Bois, the terrible reality of his miscalculation crashing down on him. He hadn't been dealing with a troublemaker. He had been publicly humiliating the personal physician of his own boss's grandchild. David felt a fresh wave of shock. He knew the name Dubois. Of course, Dubois Holdings was a major player in luxury retail. He had never made the connection to Anna. She rarely talked about her patients' families, citing privacy, but he knew she treated the children of some of Los Angeles's most powerful people. He just never understood the depth of the relationship she forged. He had seen her work as a list of appointments and surgeries, not as a web of profound human connection. Catherine's attention was still locked on Mark. "I'm waiting," she said, her voice like chipping ice. "Mrs. Dubois, there was a misunderstanding," Mark stammered, wringing his hands. "This lady, Dr. Sharma. She was being aggressive. She was demanding." "Demanding what?" Catherine cut in sharply. "Demanding to be treated with basic human decency. Demanding to purchase an item we have in stock." She turned to Anna. "Anna, what did you want?" "The Cybex Sirona S," Anna said simply. "I was told it was reserved, that I couldn't afford it, and that I was likely trying to perpetrate some kind of scam." She relayed the facts calmly, without embellishment. She didn't need to. The bare truth was damning enough. Catherine's eyes narrowed into slits. She looked at the car seat, then at Mark. "The Davenport's car seat was delivered to their home in Bear yesterday morning. I supervised the complimentary installation myself. That display model is for sale." The final nail was hammered into Mark's professional coffin. He hadn't just been prejudiced. He had been lazy and incompetent, lying to a customer for no reason other than his own petty desire to feel powerful. "Frank," Catherine said, her voice sharp. The security guard jumped to attention. "Go to the back office. Bring me the termination paperwork and a glass of water for Dr. Sharma." "Yes, Mrs. Dubois," Frank said, looking immensely relieved to be given a task that didn't involve manhandling a pregnant doctor. He shot a pitying look at Mark and skewered away. Catherine turned her full, formidable attention back to her store director. "You have been the public face of my brand at this flagship location for 3 years, Mark. In that time, I have trusted you to embody our values. Quality, safety, and above all, service. Service that is supposed to be extended to every single person who walks through those doors, whether they are buying a pair of socks or an entire nursery." She took a step closer, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Today, you have shown me that you are not only incapable of embodying those values, but that you actively work against them. You judged a woman based on her race and her clothing. You humiliated her. You lied to her, and you threatened her. And you did it all to Dr. Anna Sharma." Her voice dropped, becoming thick with an emotion that was fiercely personal. "Let me tell you who Dr. Sharma is. 2 years ago, my grandson Leo was born with a heart the size of a walnut and a hole in it so large the doctors at Cedars-Sinai told us to say our goodbyes. They said nothing could be done. Then someone gave us Anna's name. This woman with her own 2 hands spent 9 hours rebuilding my grandson's heart. She gave him a life. She gave my daughter her son back. She gave me my grandson." Tears welled in Catherine's eyes, but her voice never wavered. "So when you insult her, Mark, you are not just insulting a customer. You are insulting my family. You are insulting the very reason I can come to work every day without being paralyzed by grief. You are, in short, finished." She didn't shout. She didn't have to. Her words, delivered with a quiet, righteous fury, were the most devastating condemnation imaginable. Mark Peterson stood stripped of his authority and his dignity, a hollowed-out man in a too-tight suit. David watched it all, his own world crumbling. He had seen Anya as a wife who had failed him. He had never truly seen her as Dr. Sharma, the miracle worker. He had never understood the power she wielded, not a power of money or status, but the profound, life-altering power of her skill and compassion. He had left her because he thought she wasn't enough. And in that moment, he realized with sickening clarity that it was he who had never been worthy of her. The termination paperwork appeared in Frank's hand, as if by magic. He handed the clipboard and a pen to Catherine along with a bottle of Fiji water for Anna, avoiding Mark's pleading gaze. The theater of power had concluded its first act. The second was the quiet administrative execution. Catherine didn't hand the clipboard to Mark. She placed it on the counter of the checkout desk with a soft, definitive click. "My office now," she said to him, her tone leaving no room for argument. She then turned to the other employees, Chloe and a young man who had been frozen behind the register. Chloe, please retrieve a new box Cybex Sirona S from the stockroom for Dr. Sharma. Thomas, you will ring it up. It is, of course, on the house. And please add this, Anna said, her voice calm as she picked up a small, exquisitely soft stuffed elephant from a nearby display. She wanted to buy something to reclaim her status as a customer, not a charity case. It was a small gesture, but it was hers. Of course, Catherine said, her eyes softening as she looked at Anna. Thomas, add the elephant to Dr. Sharma's purchase. She will pay for that. Use my personal card for the car seat. This subtle distinction was a mark of respect. Catherine wasn't just giving a gift. She was correcting a transaction that had gone wrong, acknowledging Anna's agency in the process. As Mark shuffled toward the back office like a man walking to the gallows, Catherine addressed the remaining customers whose phones were now universally pointed at the scene. To all of our patrons, she announced, her voice resonating with authority. I want to apologize sincerely for what you witnessed here today. The behavior of my now former store director was inexcusable and is antithetical to everything Bambino Couture stands for. We will be closing for the remainder of the day to address this issue internally. We appreciate your understanding. Her statement was a masterclass in crisis management, swift, decisive, and sincere. The young woman who had been filming lowered her phone, looking impressed. The store began to empty out, the shoppers leaving with a story they would be telling for weeks. That left only Anna, Catherine, and David standing in a triangle of unresolved tension. Catherine led Anna to a plush velvet armchair near the front window. Please sit, she insisted. You've been standing for far too long. Can I get you anything else? Tea? A snack? The water is perfect. Thank you, Anna said, sinking into the chair. The adrenaline that had sustained her was beginning to fade, leaving a deep, bone-aching exhaustion in its wake. David stood awkwardly a few feet away, a ghost at this strange, intimate reunion. He was irrelevant to their connection, an outsider to the world of saved lives and profound gratitude that bound them. He felt a desperate need to say something, to fix the unfixable, but the words wouldn't come. What could he possibly say? Sorry, my ex-wife was racially profiled. And by the way, that miracle baby you're carrying is mine. Catherine, having ensured Anna was comfortable, finally turned to David. Her expression was polite but cool. She recognized his type instantly, the rodeo drive uniform, the air of self-importance. She assumed he was with Anna, her husband or partner who had failed spectacularly to defend her. And you are? She asked, her tone neutral, but questioning. Before David could answer, Anna spoke. He's my ex-husband, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. David chunned. The statement hung in the air. Ex-husband. The word explained his clumsy intervention, his shock, his irrelevance. Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly. She gave David a long, appraising look, and in that single glance he felt himself judged and found wanting. She was a woman who understood value, true value, and she had clearly calculated his as negligible. I see, Catherine said, the words carrying a weight of unspoken meaning. She turned her back on him, a dismissal more profound than any insult, and crouched down beside Anna's chair. Anna, she said, her voice soft and full of concern. Are you truly all right? That was a disgraceful ordeal. No one, least of all you, should ever have to endure something like that. I'm okay, Anna said, managing a small smile. Just tired and angry, but mostly tired. She placed a hand on her belly. He's kicking up a storm, though? I think he was angry, too. Catherine laughed, a genuine warm sound. He has his mother's spirit. Then Leo is the same way, a little fighter. She looked at Anna with deep affection. I mean it, Anna. My family owes you a debt we can never repay. The fact that this happened in my store of all places, I am mortified. It's not your fault, Catherine, Anna assured her. It's a systemic problem. Mark is just one symptom of a much larger disease. Perhaps, Catherine conceded, but you cure diseases by treating the symptoms one by one, and sometimes you have to perform a radical excision. The sound of Mark's raised, pleading voice could be heard faintly from the back office, followed by Catherine's firm, non-negotiable tones from a different man, likely her head of HR. The excision was underway. While they spoke, Thomas brought the large boxed car seat to the front along with a small, elegant shopping bag containing the stuffed elephant. He processed the transaction quietly and efficiently, handing the receipt to Anna. The simple act of paying, of completing her intended purchase, felt like a victory. Anna looked at the receipt in her hand, the proof that she had weathered the storm and emerged on the other side, whole and unbowed. It was then that David finally broke his silence. His voice was hoarse, unrecognizable. Anna. She looked up at him. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a desperate, frantic energy. The confident, controlled man he had been 20 minutes ago was gone, replaced by someone raw and unraveling. The baby, he whispered, his voice cracking. Is it? He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Anna held his gaze. She owed him nothing. No explanation, no absolution. Her life and the life growing inside her was her own. But seeing the genuine anguish in his eyes, she decided to give him not a confession, but a simple, unadorned fact. The divorce was finalized 194 days ago, she said, her voice as steady and precise as a scalpel. You can do the math. And with that, David's chin broke. A choked guttural sob escaped his lips. He stumbled back, his hand flying to his mouth as if to stifle the sound. The truth, delivered with such clinical precision, had shattered his last defense. It was his. The child he had accused her of not wanting. The family he had left her to find elsewhere. It had been there all along, a secret heartbeat he had been deaf to. He stared at her, at the beautiful, impossible swell of her belly, and saw the full, staggering magnitude of his loss. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost a future. He had lost his child, and he had no one to blame but himself. David's breakdown was not loud or theatrical. It was a silent internal collapse. He sank onto a velvet ottoman, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the force of his suppressed sobs. The Zna suit, his armor of success and control, now looked like a costume on a broken man. He was oblivious to Catherine's disapproving stare, to Anna's quiet pity. He was alone in the wreckage of his own making. Anna watched him for a moment, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. There was a grim satisfaction in seeing him finally understand the consequences of his actions. But there was no joy. His pain didn't erase hers. It was just more pain, another casualty of their shared history. She turned away, focusing on the future, which was now boxed and waiting by the door. Catherine, having dealt with Mark, returned to the main floor. Her HR director followed, giving a slight professional nod before escorting a pale and visibly shaken Mark Peterson out a back exit. The excision was complete. Frank will bring the car seat to your car, Anna, Catherine said, her voice all business again, though her eyes remained soft when she looked at her friend. And I've already been on the phone with my executive team. We're not just firing Mark. She paced the floor, her energy palpable. You were right. He's a symptom. The disease is ignorance, entitlement, and a complete lack of empathy. It's a cancer in the service industry, and I will not have it in my company. Starting Monday, every single Bambino Couture employee from the stockroom to the boardroom will begin a mandatory comprehensive diversity and sensitivity training program. She stopped and looked at Anna. And I want to do more than that. I want this to mean something. With your permission, I'd like to partner with your department at UCLA. We're going to establish a charitable foundation funded by a percentage of our profits. It will provide essential high-quality baby gear, car seats, cribs, everything to underprivileged families in the Los Angeles area. We'll call it the Leo Project after my grandson. She paused, then added, and after his future friend. She smiled, gesturing toward Anna's belly. Anna was stunned. This had gone from a moment of personal humiliation to the catalyst for real institutional change, a program that could help thousands of families keeping their children safe. Catherine, I don't know what to say. That's incredible. It's necessary, Catherine said firmly. And it's long overdue. What happened today was a wake-up call for me. I've been too insulated in my corporate bubble. It's time I used my power for something more than selling luxury goods. The young woman who had filmed the incident, who had been waiting patiently outside, now hesitantly approached the open door. Excuse me, Mrs. Dubois. Dr. Sharma, she said. My name is Sarah. I'm a journalism student at USC. I have the entire altercation on video. Catherine and Anna exchanged a look. I was going to post it, Sarah admitted, because what he did was so wrong. But now, hearing what you're planning, that's the real story. The story isn't just about one racist manager. It's about the response. It's about change. Would you be willing to give us a copy of that video? Catherine asked. On one condition, Sarah said, her eyes bright with journalistic fervor. You give me an exclusive interview, both of you. Let me be the one to tell this story properly. Catherine smiled. I think that can be arranged. Outside on Rodeo Drive, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows. Frank had loaded the car seat into the trunk of Anna's practical Subaru, a car David had always despised. As Anna said her goodbyes to Catherine, promising to call her later, she saw David rise from the ottoman. He walked toward her, his face a mess of tears and regret. He stopped a few feet from her, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. Anya, I'm so sorry, he whispered. For everything. For what I said in there, for how I treated you, for the last 2 years. I was a fool. Yes, she said, her voice not unkind, but not forgiving either. It was simply a statement of fact. You were. Can we talk? He pleaded, his eyes searching hers for a glimmer of hope. Please, about the baby, our baby. I want to be involved. I can help. I can give you anything you want. There it was again. The offer of money, the transactional solution. Some things Anna realized would never change. This isn't about what you can give me, David, she said calmly. It was never about that. And he, she said, placing a hand on her belly, is not a problem you can solve with your checkbook. He is my son. A son, he choked out. Anna looked at him, at the man she had once loved, and felt a profound sense of closure. The anger was gone, replaced by a quiet, sad certainty. You wanted a family, David, but you didn't want the work that comes with it. You didn't want a partner. You wanted an accessory. I am not an accessory, and my son will not be raised to be one either. I've changed, he insisted, taking a step closer. I'm glad to hear that, she said, taking a step back. But I'm not willing to bet my son's future on it. She opened her car door. You will have a lawyer's letter regarding parental rights and child support. Everything will be handled legally and formally, but that door is closed. Goodbye, David. She got into her car without a backward glance. As she drove away from the glittering hollow facade of Rodeo Drive, she didn't look in the rear-view mirror. She didn't need to. She could feel his eyes on her, but for the first time, his gaze had no power. She was driving toward her future with her son safe in the back, his tiny stuffed elephant on the seat beside her. The story broke 2 days later. Sarah's article, published on a major online news platform, was a viral sensation. It wasn't just a story about a racist manager. It was a nuanced piece about unconscious bias, corporate responsibility, and the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be diminished. Sarah had skillfully woven together the ugly footage from her phone with powerful quotes from Catherine about the need for systemic change and a brief, dignified statement from Anna about the importance of safety and respect for all families. The video clip of Mark Peterson saying people like her became a meme, a shorthand for casual country club prejudice. He was universally condemned, a pariah in the world of luxury retail. His career was over. Bambino Couture, however, saw its reputation soar. Catherine's swift, decisive actions were lauded. The announcement of the mandatory training program and the Leo Project Foundation was held up as a model of corporate accountability. Sales tripled in the week following the article's publication. People wanted to support a brand that not only admitted its failings, but took concrete, meaningful steps to correct them. The first donations to the foundation poured in, and Anna was asked to sit on the board, a position she proudly accepted. For David, the aftermath was a private hell. The story was everywhere. His friends and colleagues saw it. They saw his ex-wife, the brilliant doctor he had let go, being celebrated as a hero. They saw the company he respected, Bambino Couture, making amends. And while his name was never mentioned in the article, he was there in the background of the video, a silent, ineffectual man in an expensive suit. His father called him. I saw that article about your ex-wife, William Chun had said, his voice heavy with the disappointment that was his primary language. She's an impressive woman. You made a mistake, son. The words were a quiet indictment of David's life choices. He tried to function, to go to work, to execute trades, but his focus was shattered. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Anna's face, calm and resolute. He saw the curve of her belly, the promise of a child he had abandoned before it was even born. He had spent his life accumulating wealth, believing it was the ultimate measure of a man. Now he felt utterly impoverished. The millions in his portfolio were worthless compared to the one thing he had so carelessly thrown away. a family with a woman of substance and strength. He received the letter from Anna's lawyer. It was formal, clear, and non-negotiable. It laid out a schedule for child support payments calculated based on his income and stated that Dr. Sharma would have sole physical and legal custody. It offered him supervised visitation rights after the child's birth, pending a psychological evaluation. It was fair, it was professional, and it was heartbreakingly impersonal. 3 months later, Anna gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Kiran, a Sanskrit word for ray of light. He had her eyes, and she thought with a private smile, her stubborn spirit. Her hospital room was filled with flowers, not from David, but from Catherine, her colleagues, and the dozens of families whose children she had cared for. She was on maternity leave, sitting in the nursery of her quiet home, rocking Kiran in her arms. The room was painted a soft, gentle yellow. The Cybex Sirona S was installed in her car, and the little stuffed elephant sat on the bookshelf, a small gray sentinel watching over the crib. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah, the journalism student. It contained a link to a new article, The Bambino Effect: How One Company's Scandal Sparked a Nationwide Push for Retail Reform. The story detailed how several other major luxury brands, spooked by the public fallout and inspired by Catherine's example, had begun implementing their own sensitivity training programs. The ripple effect was real. Her moment of humiliation had, in a strange and unexpected way, made the world a slightly better, more accountable place. She looked down at her son, his tiny hand wrapped around her finger. He was so small, so perfect. Her life was not what she had planned. It was harder in some ways, lonelier at times, but it was also richer and more meaningful than she could have ever imagined. She was not just Dr. Sharma, the cardiologist. She was Kiran's mother, and in that role, she held a power far greater than any she had wielded in the operating room. It was the power to create a world for her son, built on a foundation of love, respect, and quiet, unshakable strength. She was his ray of light, and he was hers. In the end, Anna Sharma's ordeal at Bambino Couture was not just an ending, but a powerful beginning. Mark Peterson's prejudice cost him his career, while David Chun was left to grapple with the profound loss of a family he never knew he had. More importantly, Anna's quiet defiance and Catherine Du Bois's decisive action sparked a wave of corporate reform, turning a moment of personal injustice into a catalyst for widespread change. Anna, with her son Kiran, built a new life, proving that true strength isn't about the noise you make, but the unshakable dignity you refuse to surrender. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more dramatic real-life stories, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update.